Signs of the Southland. Mr. Grant, you've informed us that it's the what was it, the 15th anniversary of your first Georgia Tech sporting event ever?
Yes, that it is. I watched a Georgia Tech versus Clemson home basketball game, having no connection to the Institute, but just because it was on television in the Elephant and Castle pub in Chicago for some reason, because I was not allowed to visit my cousin who had just been born. So it was me and my mom and my two siblings hiding out in a pub on a gross night in downtown Chicago. And the only reason I remember it is because Buzz was most of the court logo at that time, and I was like, "That's weird. That's different. I don't know this yellow and black team." And yeah, now 15 years later, I have a podcast about them, so that's very fun.
So it's your cousin's fault that you're here today. Kind of.
I credit the miracle on Techwood because I would not have remembered this
Okay.
if I had not applied after that. But yeah, we can blame him. That works too. That's a good old fashioned Grant family tradition
Yeah, there you
is
go.
blaming Jack. So,
Wait, what?
Fair. Speaking of Jack, your first Tech sporting event, very quickly.
Yeah, I remember watching the football ACC championship against Wake Forest. I only remember it because it was very rainy that day, I think it was rainy all over the southeast that day. So I was like, oh, that's weird. That's the same way in Charlotte. I'll actually be in that stadium this weekend for the Atlanta United
Jacksonville.
match. So.
Jacksonville.
It
Yeah, it
was
was
in
Jacksonville
Jacksonville?
that year.
That one was
They
in
did
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville.
Charlotte.
They
Oh
alternated
man.
Tampa.
Jacksonville and Charlotte, and then Charlotte
And
got the
Tampa.
permanent deal. Oh, and
Oh,
Tampa.
And
Yeah.
Tampa.
oh my goodness.
Noted ACC cities,
But
Tampa and Jacksonville.
But also, like, it was rainy. Who cares? Anyways, I'm going to Charlotte this weekend. Come find me at the Atlanta United game.
We also have Asa Waters with us, our basketball expert extraordinaire. Asa, your first Georgia Tech sporting event, please.
I could not remember off the top of my head, but I do have a very clear childhood memory of watching Amon Shumpert miss two free throws at the end of some game,
Oh,
and my
great.
dad being like, "Wow, they always miss free throws," and I'm like, "Yeah, so true."
Still
man.
to this
is the first
day.
game I've
To this
watched.
day.
Yeah, still very true.
I don't know if I told you this, but he and I went to the same high school. So I grew up watching him miss free throws
Oh,
even
wow.
before he went
My
to Georgia
goodness.
Tech. Mm-hmm. It's
Incredible stuff.
It's a
time-honored
it's an
tradition
Oak Park,
for-
River Forest, and Tech tradition. Truly honored. For me, it was the 2014 Duke game, which for a long time was the last time it had ever rained for a Georgia Tech game for like 6 or 7 years running. And then I think in 2020, everything was cursed. And so it just started to pour. It was one of those things where it just started raining at halftime. It was like, it looked fine for most of the day. And then at halftime, all the rain clouds rolled in and then a massive tornado warning. It was great. Super fun. Other news items for the week, Mr. Purdy.
Two either conference or national players of the week. We're on a string of these since like Tony Morgan she's had a string of freshman ACC players of the weeks, and they just kind of kept rolling, especially once baseball started. As part of the basketball part, which we'll get to, Miles Kelly was the ACC player of the week and remarkably well deserved for the fact that anything outside of the basket he wouldn't hit. He only hit the basket. And then Jackson Finley was one of the national players of the week in baseball this week for doing a Shohei Ohtani-esque weekend of getting hits and striking out people on both ends. So, which I feel like, not to go on a tangent, it's just a cheat code for baseball. Once you can do both sides, it's just like, well, if someone does really good on one side, did they do the other one? No. So
We just don't see dual ability athletes in baseball
no, we
anymore.
don't. So
It's a shame.
I don't think that writers will shoehorn Jackson Finley into this spot frequently unless it's outwardly deserved, like this weekend it was. But just in general, cool to see our guys just showing out and being their best selves, especially in critical games. These were critical game weekends for both teams.
Mr. Purdy, some other notes from around the Institute.
Yeah, so from the admissions office, there's been some various scholarship programs and whatnot for students coming from Georgia that are applying to Tech who may not be in as fortunate a financial situation to come to Tech. And so between the Hope Scholarship's been a big thing. I wrote that my whole way going through Tech, and Zell Miller, which is the other version of that. There's pathways, all sorts of different things, but one of the new ones is the Tech Promise Scholarship, which already existed. But the idea of that one is if you come away from a Georgia family with low income, and you graduate from Tech, you do so debt free. And the the ceiling of your family income now to qualify for that is $55,500 a year. So this expands the pool of potential Georgia students that who very much deserve to come to Tech will be able to and not have to worry about the financial part of it and that burden.
So potentially dumb question here as an out-of-stater. You guys are both Hope Zell types. Does that not already cover? And I thought it was anyone who goes to an in-state university gets
I still
paid
have
for already.
That's just tuition. I still have, depending on how this whole debt cancellation works once that gets through the Supreme Court, I'll have varying numbers of thousands of dollars in debt from other non-tuition fees.
Okay, so this is basically the everything. To translate it to athletics, it's the full cost of attendance rather than just the tuition. Okay, cool. Yes. Thanks.
Asa, were you in state or are you out of state?
I did not go to Tech. But
I forgot you said this last time.
Yeah. I was in state for the college that I did go to.
Nice.
Just dox him harder, Jack. Dox him harder.
Yikes.
I'm getting your address.
I do want to add that there was a movement when Jake and I were in school. There was a change in policy to allow auto admission for any Atlanta public schools, valedictorians and salutatorians, which I thought was an interesting move, a very good move. And this is sort of an expansion of programs like that, right? You were mentioning a bunch of different pathways to get into Tech. It's along the same lines, right? Making sure that people that come from underserved backgrounds or underserved communities can continue getting into Georgia Tech and do so at minimal cost and minimal burden. So I'm always for that, and I think it's both like a social good and also like it's good for the brand and good for the progress and service motto that Georgia Tech tries to embody.
They've done a great job trying to find as many ways to get the quality of students that should be coming to Tech, that deserve to be at Tech, versus just who versus just like who can afford it. Like they're trying to, as much as they can, make that not a question that needs to be answered if they can manage.
Yeah. Speaking of other good programs, men's basketball over the past couple of weeks. Did you just put
those two ideas together? The men's basketball team.
That's the first time I've heard Akshay compliment men's basketball since the ACC title. First one.
Look, Fanatics still hasn't sent me my shirt for the ACC title, by the way, and it's going on almost 2.5 years, or 2 years exactly. We have Asa here with us. I don't. They sent me an email saying they weren't going to send it to me. It was dumb. We have Asa here with us. Asa, you wrote a really awesome piece this past week using some advanced stats, which I always appreciate, to describe the latter stages of Tech's season, especially its transformation over the last month. Tell us a little bit about that first and some of the stuff that you found.
It's baffling. I mean, last time I was on here to talk about basketball was at the lowest of the low after getting beat by 43 points by Duke. And I think we all kind of just figured that was going to be how the rest of the year went.
And that was before the Louisville loss too, right?
Yeah, okay, maybe that wasn't the lowest.
We went further.
Yeah,
we dug an even deeper hole.
Yeah, but after that, they've been going crazy. I talked about it on the article, but essentially 3-point shooting has been like the key, and that's come from a number of lineup changes, but most notably Javon Franklin just being the only big man ever to touch the court, which is great because for that Princeton to work and for that 4-out-1-in system to work, like the center has to be a threat. And Rodney Howard is fine. Like he's not a terrible player, but he isn't a threat to score the basketball. So having a guy that can handle the ball, score inside, pass, frees up everything else. And then the other major change is Kyle Sturdivant stepping in for Davon Smith after his injury and just shooting the lights out, like making up for the fact that he was pretty terrible to start the year. So yeah, now you've got four guys that can shoot the ball around like this do it all unicorn in the middle, and they're looking really good. Like legitimately one of the better teams in the ACC.
And these performances, like you said, have been really good. They beat Syracuse by 20 at Syracuse in that stupid football stadium. And they went to Conti Forum to end the year, winning by 8. So let's talk a little bit about that Syracuse game. Let's go over to you, Mr. Grant. What were your takeaways?
I mean, they played about as well as you can ask. I mean, the 20-point margin is one thing, but 20-point margin on the road at Syracuse, you may deride it as a football stadium, but and granted, the attendance is not quite what it was in its heyday, or maybe against a rival, if you will, but it's still a pretty intimidating place by reputation to play a basketball game. And they went in and they had their best offensive showing. I mean, you really can't ask for much better than that. And that was, I don't know, it's fun. It's different. I know that's not super analytical, but I just have at least in my head, a pretty big mental roadblock when I think Syracuse and road basketball, even if maybe that game is the one that causes Jim Boeheim's career to come to an illustrious end. We'll see what happens there.
Illustrious is definitely a word that I could use to describe Jim Boeheim's career. It's definitely a word that I could use. Would I choose to use it? Probably not. Mr. Purdy, tell me about the Boston College game.
I mean, I caught more of the Syracuse game than the Boston College. I was at Georgia Tech game baseball during the Boston College, but I was tracking it just to be like, okay, did they at least? I think the primary focus there was, can you back up a massive win like that? And they did. That's the big thing I pull out of that, because at that point we couldn't really do much in terms of seeding. That was kind of out of our hands. Winning was going to help, but it's like we were low chance of vaulting into the second day of the tournament to start from going back than getting out of the first. So that was the big thing. We knew Boston College wasn't an elite team, so it's just like, if we're gonna play like we did against Syracuse, then you got to beat teams like Boston College, and we did.
Yeah, I will add Boston College along with Tech, one of the biggest risers in the past month. Like they were not the same team that the record would indicate. So that's a much better win than the Syracuse win. Honestly, Syracuse was tanking real bad at the time we played
They
them.
did not look like they cared about that game in the last. Like I kind of stopped. I mean, I had stopped just watching this team in general, and then I saw what was going on there. I'm like, oh, hold on. And so I caught that second half, and I could not believe how. I mean, Syracuse in a lot of ways looked like how we did in some games earlier this year, where it was just like, what's going on here? And like, okay, this is clearly just a bad day that's just only going the wrong direction.
I'm going to add a little bit of color to the Boston College thing, too, because Boston College did pick up a run, kind of like we saw at the beginning of the year.
That's right. There was a few runs
Virginia,
in that game. I forgot.
Iowa, and Tech was down, I think it was 11, relatively late in the game. And I went from being in a place from where I could follow along to a stationary screen to Gap to being in my car and listening on the radio. And I chose that as a safe time because I'm like, it's 11. I got to make a pivot. And then I get in the car and they're winning. And I was like, what the heck? And it's because they decided, maybe not decided, but it's a team that has always had the potential to do that. Stop a run, come back from being in a hole when the shooting clicks. And that's not something that we saw last year. And it's a trope we talked about last year. Oh man, it looks like Miles is just a hair off. Oh, it looks like Debo's just a hair off. And it's finally all coming together. And Pastor says this a lot in his press conferences. Oh, it's a month later than it's been in the past. And I think he's right, because inherently, I don't think this team, once he kind of figured out the lineup, if you will, and the piece earlier in the week was a great illustration with like actual numbers rather than #vibes as to why that's the case. But, it's clear. I'm not going to, disparage the 21 team. But it really feels like a very similar jump to them playing for not that great earlier in the year. And then for that team, it clicked in January, right? And that gives you the time to build a resume. Beat a pretty good Clemson team, beat Duke, even though that was a down year for Duke. It's still winning that game, right? And being really solid down the stretch. But not to toot my own horn, if we turn this clock back about 4 weeks, I think we kind of just pulled off exactly what this podcast said, and me, if you will, said would be the best case scenario, right? It's them figuring out and playing well down the stretch. Is that something that's going to get them into the tournament? No. Is it ultimately kind of a disappointing year? I'd argue yes, but not to just talk for 3 straight minutes, but I think they're playing right now at this moment in time as the team we saw they could get to at the beginning of the year. Is that a fair take?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Waters, you watch both the. Oh, well, you're getting right ahead of me. I was going to say you watched both of these games, and you wrote the article, so I'm sure you have. You want to make people that read the article and then disagreed with your conclusions that they are, hot and getting better. Eat some crow here.
Yeah. I remember probably like 2 weeks ago, I wrote one about like this is right after we maybe won like 2 games. We were like 2-3, but clearly this was like a different team. And I wrote an article saying like this team's playing so much better, and was kind of nervous because I kind of was afraid of the decline, and this was just like a little blip. And yeah, people were lighting me up in the comment section talking about how bad the team is. And then I was validated. They actually are so much better. But yeah, I think, like you said, we all kind of, at least, I don't know, I thought that this team had the potential to do this. There are like clear, really good shooters on this team. And I will be the first to say I didn't think Javon Franklin would be this good. I guess the guy was recruited by Auburn, so he's not like, a slouch.
He's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah, not bad at all.
This world knows what he wants.
Yeah. So.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm gonna leave that there.
We're not getting the FCC involved in this recording. Not this time. Please continue.
Not this time.
But the potential was there. It was just a matter of whether or not they could make it work. And who knows why Rodney Howard was the guy for so long, way too long. I don't know. I think it's a matter of it's like traditional basketball thought. Like you've got to have a guy that's over 6'6" on the court, or else you're going to get killed. But when that guy that's over 6'6" doesn't offer you much outside of being that tall, you're not really helping yourself. So I feel like it's just like the right move to accept that if you play a team that has really talented big men, you're going to get scored on in the post. But at least be doing something to make up for it. And like Javon Franklin does about 100 somethings to make up for it. So
yeah. And one of those, he gets a triple-double. First one in age. I think the Iman Shumpert one was the last one in 2011, I want to say, was the year. It's only the fifth one in school history. He had a 14, 15, and 10. I'll say that last assist was kind of forced. Like, they were looking for it, which, they definitely could, because Syracuse wasn't stopping us because they just kind of stopped trying in the last 4 minutes of that game. So, like, it was very doable, and found Miles on a corner 3. We had the school record for threes and assists in a single game at 18 threes and 27 assists, and then Terry scored 24. One question on this. Would you say when Terry was out, there was definitely like a clear, like, okay, this team is just not what it can be without him on the court. And one of us mentioned it at some point. It's like, okay, he's back. The performances were far more well-rounded. So, I mean, I think at this point, if we're not going to play Howard, that makes Franklin probably the most important guy on the court. But in terms of that next guy, it's like, okay, if you're without both of these guys, in terms of Franklin and Terry, would you say we're screwed? I mean, to put it bluntly.
Yeah. I responded to a comment, but I didn't get a chance to actually put it in the article. But it was one thing I wanted to talk about was Lance Terry. Like, he's clearly the best defender on this team by a mile. And it's not flashy like Jose. He's not getting like 5 steals.
Right.
But he just completely shuts down. If it's in zone defense, he shuts down that entire side of the court. If it's man-to-man, he shuts down his guy. A big reason we destroyed Syracuse was him just bodying Joe Girard the entire time, to the point where Girard looked like he didn't even want to be there. So yeah, Terry on defense is like a must-have because we don't have that guy outside of him. But also on offense, like if he's open for 3, he's knocking it down, and he is like lightning quick. He's not really a great ball handler, but he's going to try to like dunk on somebody, which is nice to see at the guard position.
Yeah.
So I will say, I think it kind of accentuates his importance with Davon's continued absence as well. But
yeah,
otherwise I completely agree.
Yeah. And I
got one.
I seriously doubt we'll see Davon, but I would be interested to see how he fits. I don't know if he does fit into this lineup. The big issue is he can't shoot. So you lose that dynamic of having four guys that can shoot, plus kind of this gravitational pull at center. Because if they can sag off Davon.
Our path to victory, we have to win 5 days in a row. It's just like we're just have to do this one thing, shooting so freaking well that it doesn't matter how well you defend us, and we'll allow and basically do a Dallas Mavericks. Like, we're going to allow 120 points a game, but we've got Luka and Kyrie Irving, so we're going to score 160 on you if you aren't careful.
The thing is, though, the defense hasn't dropped off. But we're playing roughly at the same level on defense. And we're doing that through, like, actually generating some, I guess to use a football word, like some havoc plays, like blocking shots, getting steals. And that's another part of the value that Javon Franklin adds in.
It'll be interesting. If we win this first game, it'll be interesting to see how well that stacks up, because that Pitt game was recently enough and far enough back that there's been a growth period there. So I'd be very curious if we can pull it out and see what happens.
Akshay, if you put another Jeff Collinsism in our chat, I'm going to kick you off the podcast. I'll give you $23 million to go away right now.
Oh my God,
there's only
10 million more than Jeff got.
There's only 11. Let's talk about that ACC tournament matchup. Georgia Tech is the 12 seed. They will face off against Florida State. That is a 2 p.m. tip on Tuesday. That'll be today when you're listening to this in Greensboro, Jim Boeheim's favorite ACC tournament location. A win will put them against what I call the most scathing indictment you can make about the current state of ACC men's basketball, 5 seed Pittsburgh. No.
You need to learn something right now, Akshay. Before Pittsburgh joined the ACC, I want you to guess how many years in a row they had made the tournament.
Probably a lot, but that's not going to stop me from hating.
10 straight tournaments from 2002 to 2011. Yes, they did not make it in 2012. I want you to tell me then, what was their seed in 2011?
Seed in 2011?
Their last a tournament appearance before they joined the ACC.
3. They were not a 1 that year. There's no way.
Played a 16 seed in the first round, homie.
You're kidding me. Anyway, I'm standing by my statement.
I'm just going to let you sit with that horrible take for one more second while shout out Braden Daniels for getting in the Syracuse game, because I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've seen his name on a box score. So, and while you think about what you've said and done, Pittsburgh, a historically notable basketball school, is a 5 seed, but I don't think that it is a scathing indictment on the state of ACC men's basketball. And I think if we see 10 Big Ten teams make the tournament from their very mediocre conference as well, it'd be about the same as inviting 10 of this year's ACC teams in. Boom. All right, I've got my point in. You guys can continue with the podcast.
Unbelievable.
There's a fair amount of Big Ten teams that are going to be in there, too. Like, it's
invite the whole Big 12.
Big 12,
you don't need to bother with the ACC.
There's so many.
You don't need to bother with the Big 10. They're all mediocre. Just invite the whole Big 12 and see what happens.
It's going to be awful. It's going to be awful when North Carolina wins the ACC tournament and undeservedly is in the 64 again and preserves their endless streak of being at March Madness.
I have a headache.
We all know that's happening.
I have a headache thinking about this. Mr. Waters, walk me through what this matchup looks like versus Florida State.
It looks like the perfect matchup. I mean, I know we lost them early in the season, so that maybe I'll be eating those words. But just on paper, over the last month, the Florida State team is statistically like the worst perimeter defense in the nation. Teams are shooting 42% from 3 against them.
Well, that's
the past month. Considering that's what we want to do at a really high level, sets up pretty well. They've returned to form from the beginning of the season. They had a little run there in the middle, but they're looking honestly terrible. And then, obviously, who knows? We don't usually play well in the ACC tournament outside of that one year that we won it. I just remember looking at what our potential matchups could be and thinking Florida State, Pittsburgh would be like the ideal scenario, and we've got it. we have to play Duke. If we win both of those, I don't think we win that game. I don't think
No.
any chance. But so yeah, it sets up good for 2 wins. And then who knows? Maybe the confidence is there, and a miraculous 3 more wins just come out of nowhere.
If only.
Hey,
We'll see.
We'll all be traveling again.
I think it's possible, but is it probable? You guys can decide on that.
I'm not booking any flights to Greensboro right now. I'll put it that way.
Good call.
Just to round out the conversation on Georgia Tech men's basketball, Mr. Grant, does this stretch, and let's say they get 1 win and look good versus Pitt in the ACC tournament, does that change? Does that make you go warmer? Like it's a warmer seat, a colder seat, or same temperature seat for Josh Pastner?
I think that Pastner has shown that he can provide J-Pat and the athletic department the same value that Brent Key gives, being on a relatively favorable deal. He's fine. Like the floor is the floor, and we've seen the floor with Pastner. And he's got the benefit of returning some talent for next year, with the additional benefit of not requiring a buyout to get to this interim state. I think with Bat being new, needing to get the NIL house in line, needing to get finances in line, it's not necessarily a Pastner saved his job or a we can't afford to fire him. It's a we need a year type situation. I think more than like, is he on the hot seat or not? It's a, does it make sense? And right now, it just doesn't. There's not an obvious candidate in waiting. There hasn't been, at least to me, a whole ton of smoke. This is the first year that all of the brouhaha around him has finally and truly been laid to rest, with, all that kind of, and people forget that nuked like 2-3 years of his tenure, the Ron Bell saga and the uncertainty around that, and all that horrible nonsense. I don't know. We're in a place where he's a known entity and he's returning a lot of talent, and it's not like we're dripping in cash. So I just think more than anything, it doesn't make sense to fire him. If there's a guy who was like, oh man, like this Georgia Tech, Mark Price, he's tearing it up at wherever.
I hear Jim
Does
Boeheim
Mark
may be available.
Did Mark Teixeira have another roommate?
Iman
Was it Mark
Shumpert.
Price?
What's he up to?
I think that's like one of the more holistic takes I've heard. Like I think we all do bits and pieces of like Ken and everyone has reported like the buyout's around 2.5. Like we know it's if it happened, it's around there. But it's like, okay, if you read between the lines, it's like, well, they just did the Collins thing, and that was a whole nightmare. And Bats here is like, do you really want to get here day one, do that whole saga for a month, and then do it all over again and not help get the whole of the athletic department moving forward? Like that just feels like a backwards transaction to try to deal with Pastner in that way, and without a clear way forward too. It's just like we just be chopping off a branch and be like, all right, what now? There wasn't clear answers there. And just the general idea of like there's a lot of other stuff to take care of that will make the whole of tech sports way better off. And we know Pastor loves this place anyways, and he will do his darndest to help Bat in that department as well. Like that's all. I think that adds up enough to where, and I mean, thankfully we're winning too and winning good games. And had a game like the Syracuse games, be like, okay, no, everything we want to be possible is still possible in some form or fashion. But there's a lot of non-basketball reasons that matter in the grand scheme of things here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Waters.
To chime in. Disclaimer, it's probably known. I'm a known Josh Pastner supporter. I think he's actually like a really good coach. What he does on defense makes other coaches look lazy, honestly. Like switching it up constantly, like it completely makes up for not a lack of talent, but kind of a lack of talent, to where you can keep the offense, just out of rhythm. But I'm not here to talk about his coaching style. I don't know. I agree with you guys. It doesn't make sense to get rid of him. I know people are upset about mediocrity and kind of being bad, but the guy clearly loves this program, is genuinely a good person, loves the guys on the team. and is like not a bad coach. The recruiting issues have only been an issue here at Georgia Tech. Prior to that, he's been known as like an incredible recruiter. So I don't know, like saying he's failed as a recruiter, probably more of an indictment on Georgia Tech as a brand and the basketball program in general than it is on him, and probably needs more funding. I think that's the thing. If you're going to not waste money, if you're just going to dump money on something, don't dump it on a buyout contract. Dump it on like investing into the program and thinking, hey, maybe if we gave this guy some funds, he could be better, as opposed to just getting rid of him, hiring some other guy so that fans come to the games for like 1 year and then they realize, oh, this program's still not that great. I'm going to stop going to games again.
Yeah, though I really hope in like 4 or 5 years we'll be like, okay, we've done 10 years of Josh. Whenever he gets to 10 years, we look back on this particular moment. It's like, okay, I'm glad we just buried. We just kept going. We just kept going here, and we didn't overreact. Collins was an underreaction for too long that turned into just a crazy reaction, and we level heads prevailed here, which I think will be the case. Being patient.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Let's flip over to the other side of Zelnak basketball facility. The women's basketball season is over. Mr. Purdy, any notes on how that ended for us?
Yeah, they oh shoot, I already forgot who they played in the first round. That game was so long ago. Well, they lost in the first round of the ACC tournament. There's not really much to report there. Was it Boston College? Oh, it was, right, because it was Cam Sports. It was the Cam Sports Bowl again. Yeah, they did. I mean, I'm not terribly surprised. They came back. They clawed back in at the end, but it was too little, too late by that point. So ultimately, I'm not terribly surprised that that's what happened. If they kept going on, that would have been a massive shocker. And the ACC is just in a remarkably healthy point in terms of women's basketball right now. And so us being this is the lowest. We were at 13 seed, the lowest in program history. At least in the 15 team version of this. So I mean, we all knew it was a freshman core. Just a lot of volatility with the super seniors, which I guess we were us three. I don't think we're fully aware that it was going to be that super volatile, and then it just was. But they similarly to Josh, Nell just kept going. She knew what she had. She righted the ship, made them better as the year went along. Cara Dunn didn't play in this last game. That's a big key. I think she was hurt or something. So, but next year we'll have Deja Thomas, 2-time Texas State champ, Tony Morgan year 2, Cara Dunn year 2, Inez Noguero year 2. Maybe Kayla Black's year again if she wants to stick around. So, oh yeah, she will. She's only a sophomore. Yeah, she'll still be here. So we'll have rebounding, we'll have shooting, we'll have driving to the bat. We'll have a lot of stuff going on. So I am hopeful looking forward, but for now, we'll let the season rest.
I'm not letting them get away without saying that I was disappointed on how this year went, at least a little bit.
Oh no, I think that's valid. That's valid.
Oh, I'm extremely disappointed, but it is what it is at a certain level. Like like Jackie said, they got unlucky with some volatility in the transfers they brought in, and they lost a couple close games here and there. So
they did, yeah.
So that's just kind of how the cookie crumbled this year, and they'll bake another set of cookies next year. We'll figure that out at that point. Mr. Grant, men's tennis. Actually, Mr. Purdy, you were at one of these.
Yeah, I went to the Wake Forest one.
First one.
Yeah, I went to Wake.
You need to get better about planning who does these segments. Number 25, Wake Forest visited Ken Byers' tennis facility on Saturday?
Friday.
On Friday,
yeah.
During a very stormy afternoon in Midtown Atlanta. Men's tennis at Georgia Tech lost 6-1 to Wake Forest. Mr. Purdy, walk us through the ambiance.
Yeah, so they played indoors because they knew the storm was coming. I walked over there. I could tell when I was like tracking the map and everything, and if you saw the radar that day, the storm was a very thin one, but it was quick moving. And so I get there, match starts, and it starts pouring. We lose the doubles, sadly, and then by the time halfway through the singles was started, halfway through the first sets across the board, it was after the big part of the storm was gone. It was quiet outside, and then all the lights just shut off inside the tennis center. Just some of some emergency lights are still on, but the main lights on the courts just off completely, which in hindsight, like I was hoping it was going to turn into like a Super Bowl 46, 7, whichever one was the Ravens Niners when the lights went off in the Superdome.
The Superdome.
Yeah, I was hoping it was going to be something like that, where it's like, all right, every match is losing, we've got a forced reset, let's go, and nothing really changed at all. Martin just did not have a good day. He was visibly upset. I was mainly watching his court once they did get the lights back on after about 20 minutes or so. They have the lights in there that like take a while to like warm up, not your modern LEDs and stuff like that.
Which is hilarious considering how old that building is.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
not particularly old.
No, it's not. So yeah, it was not our best day. Granted, Wake Forest they are the 25th ranked team in the country. They had 2 top 100 players playing I do not know how to say these names. Karamov and
Estafakiu.
Estafakiu? Okay, cool.
Because that is the last name of one of Atlanta United's executives.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I don't know if they're related. I
Yeah,
just know
who knows?
that an Atlanta United executive has the same last name.
Just to quickly scoreboard read, our second line doubles won 6-1 in their match, Chopra Sachdev, and then Martin McDaniel lost 6-3, and McHenry and Shokri, they lost 6-3. It came down to the Martin and McDaniel match, the first at line 1, and they had a point at 5-3. They had a couple points at 5-3 to break and get to and possibly get back on serve, and then just lost a couple of critical points, and that was the end of the doubles. So it's a 6-3 that was spiritually closer. And then in singles, Chopra was the only one guy who won, and that was through a retirement. So we did not actually win any match legitimately in terms of winning a match point.
Womp, womp. Just to go through the NC State result, that was versus number 39 NC State. That was a 4-2 loss. Ooh, that was a loud noise. Martin McDaniel went unfinished 5-2 in doubles. Chopra Sachdev lost 6-1, and McKinney Chokri lost 6-2. And then in singles to go down, Martin won, McDaniel won, Chopra Sachdev. So Chopra Sachdev and Bauer lost, but Chokri picked up he was tied and unfinished. So bit of a rough day, bit of a rough weekend, really, on the courts for the men. Let's flip over to the women's side. The women faced number 4 NC State and number 29 Wake Forest. Mr. Grant, you have the con for the NC State match.
Yeah, for a long time I was on the Georgia Tech just clobbers NC State at random sports vibe, which was really only just me paying attention to tennis because I believe we had defeated them 26 times in a row. I'm not to that sport yet in my digitizing every Georgia Tech sports result that's ever happened crusade. But suffice it to say, NC State has gotten good and stayed good in the last 3 years. NC State, number 4, was a close loss, 4-3 if you are paying attention. But I know sometimes when they play these all the way out, you can pick up some points after it's decided. I will note that it was decided at 4-2. That was with wins in in not doubles. What did we? No, we lost the doubles point, and then we won on court 1. That was Carol Lee, 6-1, 6-3, and then an upset by Bilchev on court 2 was another win. That was the point that came after the end. And then I think our other win, was Mahak Jain defeating Sophie Abrams 6-3, 6-4. That Mahak Jain win actually put Tech up 2-1, which is what I was looking for in my thought process earlier when I mentioned court 2. Tech was fighting. They can play with the best. It's just, it's one of those matches, right? There's a reason they're number 4 NC State. And when you're playing against, I would argue, kind of an interesting lineup from them. They had their number 52 player on court 1, while their highest ranked player, number 15 in the country, Alana Smith, was on court 2, and number 17 on court 3. That's NC State playing not to lose. That's pretty notable, at least. And the fact that Tech walked away with wins on 4 and 2 that were both upset wins, I guess, speaks to their ability to play up to the level of competition, kind of rounding all this out on those top 5 singles courts from NC State. All of those players from them are in the top 60. So yeah, they're in it with a chance to win, but it's tough when you're playing talent that well. And Tech, I would argue, and don't really see how you could argue against this, that they got some points that they shouldn't have won in the first place, right? So just them playing about as well as they could and coming up a little bit short.
Another interesting thing in that match as well, Tech split its top line doubles pairing of Lee and Sharbura across courts. Let's see, across court 2 and 3. Instead of putting them in the one slot, they put Bilchev and Cruz in the one slot. Then it was Sharbura and Dejaj in the 2, and then Lee and Garcia Gross in the 3. Compare that to what they rolled out versus Wake Forest in the next match, where they went Lee Sharbura at the 1, Bilchev Cruz at the 2, and then Dejaj and Marsh at the 3. So lineup mechanics definitely being, there's some gamesmanship there when you're playing a top team like that, that we didn't necessarily see against maybe a more evenly matched team in Wake Forest, wouldn't you say?
Wake Forest is definitely in a more evenly matched team, and I think the ratings speak that out. I didn't honestly pay as much mind to this one as I did the other one, so I don't have a ton more to add there. It's just, tennis is a game of points in sports. Jack, you look like you have a skeptical take on what I was saying.
Sorry. I was just squinting my eyes to read the shot sheet.
Oh, I was like, man, he's really confused with I didn't watch as much tennis.
I did not catch any of these matches at all.
Oh, boy. Yeah, no, I mean it's the Sunday early match, so I kind of struggle to see those sometimes. But yeah, I don't think you can chalk too much up against either match this weekend. They're both
on the road too. I mean,
really good teams. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you? I mean, it's if anyone here would have been like, oh boy, okay. At least I mean, I love that these were close as well. Like props to them for being like they gave themselves a real fighting chance. So
it's the same way you have to talk about the men's Wake and NC State matches too, right? Those are I mean, the Wake Forest one was a little bit tough because they did get killed, but like they're good teams. Like, not that you take scheduled losses, and the women are arguably probably could have gotten a win against Wake, but it's quality competition in the ACC. The rest of the spring is going to be like this for both teams.
Yeah.
Just to go through the scores, that was a 4-2 loss to number 29 Wake Forest. Tech did not pick up a doubles point, but picked up the top 2 courts in singles, and then court number 4, but dropped the other 3. So rough ending there as well. We'll talk about softball, swim and dive, and a bunch of other stuff right after this short break.
Yes. So as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section103.com. Section 103 is the very best place to find Georgia Tech related apparel. I know that we've talked in recent weeks about baseball and the script jackets, items that they've gotten going on there. We've also talked about the seal and the new North Avenue Trade School merch, but I'm going to take this opportunity to plug one last time the Welcome to the Thriller Dome shirt for this year. Hey, if they win 5 straight, I'll talk about it next week too. But in case you really, really, really need basketball apparel, hopefully for a hopeful Wednesday game, go ahead and order that. I have that in my closet. That was the very first thing that I got from Section 103. Can't speak highly enough for their goods. As always, you can find them at section103.com and at Section 103 on Twitter.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland for March 6th. Let's talk about softball real quick. We're going to skip past the midweek versus a community college and talk about the I-75 tournament hosted at Georgia Tech. One of the games versus first opponent, Northern Iowa, got rained out, but Tech took the other one 12-2 in 5 innings. Then they picked up a 1-0 win over Southern Miss, and then a 6-0 win over Brown. That was much closer than that 6-0 scoreline seems to indicate. Mr. Purdy, you spent quite a bit of time over at Shirley Meadmore and Clements Field this weekend. What did you see?
I saw that whole Athens Community College clobbering, which that was sad, but that team was good too. So I mean, I'll note the crowd was like 80% Tech, just in terms of the measurement of like what do those crowds look like. That was a heavily pro Tech crowd, so that was fun to see. I was at the Brown game on Sunday. It was a lovely little noon 30 game, and yeah, that was a 1-0 game for a while until the bottom of the sixth. We finally got some runs at the end there. Chandler, that was a key win. A good Dennis to Nelliman tandem performance. Dennis started out, it was doing pretty well, but then eventually was walking girls, and then just was in a pinch with one out, and Nelliman basically came in and did a 5-out save to finish it. Got a good pop up, struck out I think the next person, or it was a ground out maybe, and then finished the last inning just fine. So it was a good catch up win. I'm forgetting who hit homers. I want to say Grace Connolly hit one, and I want to say Sarah Beth Allen hit another. Were the two homers? I could be wrong there.
Sounds about right to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, the offense did what it should have done in a game like that. Maybe more, but they made the lead sizable enough to make it at least the last inning. Wasn't going to be a worrying inning to where we needed to like go to Sophia Voiles in an emergency or anything like that. We had at least some wiggle room in the most important inning. So, yeah, a good. I mean, as you say in here, good get right weekend.
Confidence building weekend for sure.
Which is big considering who we have coming up next, who are not easy opponents.
Nope. Tech is currently 11-8, which is important context when you have Check's notes, Auburn at 20-2 and UVA at 17-4 in the next couple of weeks. I think that Auburn game is what, Wednesday?
That's a Wednesday at 2:00 game.
That's bizarre.
I know.
Are we really going to go out there and say that UVA is like good? Because I don't think that's the case. I mean,
no.
Running down who they played. Lamar, Houston, Sam Houston State. Okay, Nebraska, but that's an L. UNC Greensboro, Maryland, an L. Minnesota, fine. Maryland, another L. Minnesota, another L. Longwood, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, St. John's, Howard, George Washington, Radford, DePaul, Fairfield, St. Francis, George Mason, and Liberty.
These are these are a collection of teams we'd have as the last team playing in Buzz Classic.
Maryland
it sounds like a collection of
team.
liberal arts schools that politicians got rejected from.
Again, Maryland is a good team, but they were forced to play that team twice by the ACC as part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Yeah. I mean, they're 17-4, but this is like
it's not a
Boston
real
College volleyball level of non-conference scheduling.
Yes,
I mean, we see this we see this a lot with this UVA team, right? They play a very soft, because we've seen it the last couple of years, because they play a very soft non-con, and then
you did. I love it. Sorry.
They play a soft non-con, and then they like look like they're hot going into ACC play, and then they just are not able to match up against ACC opponents. Like I remember we've just seen this at least twice in the last couple of years. So I'm interested to see.
Would y'all say Tech's record is like an accurate reflection of how good this team is then? At 11-8? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
because they haven't had a soft schedule. Like they did what the volleyball team did, what women's basketball did. It was like, yeah, we're gonna stack this front part of the schedule up to make sure we know what we are, and then play the ACC.
I would say it's
I think
accurate.
I think the thing that nukes Tech just a little bit is the fact that they have been competitive in games you'd think they'd have a slight edge in, and then have gotten nuked off the face of the earth by UGA, which is by far the best team they played. So that kind of hedges my personal reaction just a little bit. But gents, I have
Auburn is ranked, so just note that.
I have interesting news. The first nitty gritty of the year is out. So if you guys can vamp a little bit, I'll have our inaugural run live on air ready to go. If you guys can talk for just a little bit.
I'll talk about Emma Kauf because she did get hit over the weekend by a pitch in her left arm and immediately went down to the ground. She came out of the game, did a couple more innings in the outfield, but it was the ball mostly hit muscle, but it was pretty close to bone. Wasn't fully bone, but there was bone contact made with the ball. She did not play in the Brown game. I don't know if she's going to play on Wednesday. I think from what I could tell, the nature of the injury, she's taking it day to day. Had her brace on. but they were going to take Sunday and be preemptive because they knew they didn't need her against Brown. So
Yeah, they
we'll
definitely
see
had
how
her
that
in a
goes.
brace. They had her in a brace during the Brown game, and just kind of taking notes on the sideline or in
Yeah.
the dugout. So hopefully we can get her back, considering how well she's hitting. So
Yeah.
that will be something to keep an eye on. I will say 11-8. Like usually, I'm looking when I'm evaluating a team, especially when it comes to baseball. I'm looking and trying to determine if a record is accurate. I'm sort of looking for, okay, well, have they lost any games that sort of came down to, have they lost or won games that came down to the wire and were
What are those one score game to
like,
borrow football
yeah,
reference? Yeah.
yeah, like, are we talking about like 50-50 win probability near the middle? Like, not
Yeah. Yeah.
statistical. I don't have like the straight number win probability for softball in front of me, but like where the game could have gone either way. And I don't really think that there have been like more than a couple of games that have been that close. Like maybe they could be 12-7, 13
Yeah.
and 6. They probably not more than that though. Like they could have picked up maybe one of those ACC Big Ten games. They got, I think they got walked off in one. Like
Mm-hmm.
they could have picked up one of those, but one or two of those, in fact. But I think this record is pretty emblematic of where they're at. They're not, and we'll just kind of see what happens when UVA comes to town, or when they go play UVA, and then also whatever like the first couple ACC series and how they stack up against the competition.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure we can say anything definitive, even 20 games in or 19 games in. I'm not so sure we can say anything definitive about the team yet. But I guess at least from my point of view, the bottom of that lineup needs some help.
Mm-hmm.
At least just from a straight up batting average perspective. And they have regressed a good bit on the mound. I don't think that either of those two things are. I guess I did just say nothing is definitive and then name two definitive things, but
You sure did.
I've never been particularly consistent in my analysis.
In a sport
so I'm just
full
gonna
of factual numbers.
look. If I had the numbers in front of me, actually, I'm gonna pull that up while Jake gets the vamp.
I'll note Jen Soleo did have a very timely 2-run single in that Brown game that kind of blew the game open. After who was it that KO? I have my scorebook somewhere from this.
Yeah, Jen
game.
had a nice two. It was a nice double to send 2 runners home.
Yeah, they
and
put
pick
up
2 RBI.
They put Caroline Davis up with 2 on and 1 out to try and score some runs, and then looked at 3 pitches and struck out.
Yeah, that one got under my skin, but that was fine. Just to back up what we were saying about Emma Calf, she's hitting 364, so you should probably figure out if she's going to be healthy for the rest of the season. Madison Dobbins has been really hot this season, 396. Slugging is a little bit low at 563, and on base percentage at 463. But she's got no home runs, but 8 RBI and 6 doubles. So she's like a professional hitting machine right now. Talking about that bottom of the lineup, so your Auburn Dupree, your Jen Soleo, they're hitting better than they were when I originally pulled this up or was thinking about this during the weekend. Jen is now at 267 and Dupree's at 263. Vukadinovich has also picked it back up. She was hitting 210 or 211 over the weekend at some point. So back, like, these are all still pretty small sample sizes.
Yeah.
Like a couple of like a game makes a 20-point difference here and there.
They hit Vukadinovich. They hit Paige 7th in this Brown game. Sandra Beth Pritchett also got her first start of the year in that game, after appearing in 3 other games, which I think was the Madison Dobbins replace. No, she was playing catcher. Oh, they had Reese Hunter DPing and had Sandra Beth catch because of the Emma Calf injury. That's what it was.
The last note that I have before I let Jake go on his little thing here is that for some reason the website lists Abby Hughes as having gotten a pitching appearance, which I don't believe is accurate.
I don't think it is either.
That's strange. Anyway, Mr. Grant, hit me.
Yeah, so it appears that perhaps I've been a little mean to Virginia because the very numbers in which I trust my brain and my logic have them ranked pretty well, as in like at large quality of team. That being said, a 17-14 record, doesn't matter if you're Massey or the RPI or me, will like that a lot. That would put them at about 41 in the Massey, at about 45 in adjusted RPI, and in the universal selection rating, I have them at 44. Again, for those that forget, that's a rating that attempts to standardize logic between baseball, softball, and volleyball deserving teams. Anyways, that being said, that's an at-large an at-large quality team in all of those rankings, if you will. Tech is substantially lower in the USI. They're at 65 in the Massey. They're at 70 in adjusted RPI, and I have them closer to 90. So a decent way out of the tournament field. Tech does get dinged a little bit simply because they have played more home games than most. A lot of teams are playing neutral and away games thus far, and Tech has not necessarily performed to the amount of weight that we put on a home match in our numbers. But that being said, Virginia for the time being is seen as a tournament quality team based on their past additions, if you will. I'm still not entirely convinced. Like, I'll believe it when I see it at the end of the year. Last year they went 28-26. That's delightfully mediocre. They were 13-11 in conference play. Again, like, that's fine. It's not particularly great. It's not particularly terrible. But it's certainly not a tournament caliber team, not in this ACC. And the year before that, they were 15-33 in 2020, 2021. So yes, I'll believe that they're improving, but I'll also believe they're a tournament team when I can see it. I went further back in the Virginia records and it gets even worse. So I'll let them have 17-4.
Let's move on to swim and dive. Diving Zone B championships were this week. Ruben Lechuga qualified for NCAA championships in the men's 1 meter diving on Sunday. Today's action, which we don't have results for just yet, includes the women's 1 meter diving with Anna Bradescu and Carmen Woodruff participating. And the men's 3 meter with Ruben Lechuga and Luke Dodson. Tuesday, so tomorrow when you're listening to this, has the women's 3 meter and the men's platform. You'll see Ruben Lechuga again on the platform. And Wednesday is the women's platform. So you're Anna Bradescu and Carmen Woodruff there, back there as well. The only other NCAA swim and dive note that we have is that Denise Ertan definitely qualified for the NCAA field. I don't think we've gotten the rest of the B cuts back yet.
No, there's still some championships going on, so we're awaiting some final times.
Yeah, so those championships are in 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah, 2 or 3. Yeah, the women go first in Knoxville, then the guys will swim in Minneapolis the next week.
Yeah, so we'll know about all of this soon enough. Men's track and field and women's track and field, for that matter, we're both off. So we head to golf, which placed 6th at the Southern Highlands Collegiate Invitational. Your top Tech finisher was Crystal Lamprecht, who tied for 9th at 7 under par. Steelman at 12th with 6 under par. Hiroshi tied for 35th, 1 over. Bartley Forrester at 73rd, 10 over. Connor Howe tied for 40th at 2 over. And then Aiden Tran, who was participating as an independent, tied for 75th at 13 over. Pretty competitive field here. Before I let some of y'all vamp on this, I'll read out the top 6. Illinois finished at 21 under par at the top, followed by Texas, who is number 16th in the nation. Pepperdine, who was number 14th. Number 4, UNC. Number 9, OU. Number 11, Florida. And then number 8, Georgia Tech. Mr. Grant, you are the knower of all things Georgia Tech golf. What say you about this result?
I think it's fine. I do want to reiterate that they were kind of further in the hole. So I think that it's just one of those, like, you can't win every week, figure stuff out. With golf, it is a little bit harder to, get into the, such and such played a certain way. I wasn't paying attention to the weather. They don't stream these on TV. So on some of this stuff, your guess is as good as mine. But as an avid scoreboard watcher, at the very least, I think that, just to see them at least bounce back a little bit from 11th to 6th. They went from being 6 over to 10 under on the last day. It's a fine finish, right? It's not world beating, but I don't know. Learn something and go on to the next one.
The other couple of notes that I have from this, Illinois actually staged an amazing comeback in this one. That's also number 7 in the nation, Illinois. They went 11 under par on the final day to win, and also took advantage of a massive UNC collapse, which saw them go 4 over on the day after leading for 3 for the rest of the time, which very, very funny for the ACC personally. Yeah, that's about all I have to say on golf. Let's head over to baseball, which I am personally frustrated by. So I'm going to let you, Mr. Purdy, lead the discussion here.
So we played LIU Long Island on Tuesday, took care of them quite fine. Then Saturday was the good old, or what do you call it? I don't know. We played Georgia over the weekend. I forgot the name of the referee. Clean old fashioned hate. There you go. So we played Friday at Georgia. Saturday was here, and Sunday was at Coolray Field in Lawrenceville, home of the Gwinnett Stripers. The first 2 games were very lopsided in the wrong way for us. Their pitching was great. Ours was not at all. And then by the time in Saturday's game, Georgia came out. I was at the Saturday game. The bats were swinging early for Georgia and often. And by the 8th inning, they didn't do a mercy rule, but if they did the 10 after 7 rule, they could have done it if they wanted to. Carson Sabathia did get his first collegiate homer in the 9th inning, which was good to see. It was a 3-run shot, so it kept the score within 10 by the end. But just pitching wise, just didn't have it those first 2 days to match up at all. And there was a couple. I think who was pitching that allowed the big homers. I took some marks of like the notable mistake. Oh, Aiden Vinatieri let 2 middle fastballs just hang over the plate, and those are the homers that just absolutely gave Georgia the game. They were able to get a lot of runs there. I was only able to catch so much of Sunday's game, but we did win that game. Ben King and Gary Busey did a lot of good work there and held Georgia to only 1-2 runs at the end of that. So that game was actually really good in terms of just overall performance. Good quality baseball game. Didn't let anything get out of hand. Put enough runs up early and held on. And they have Lipscomb on Tuesday, and then they host Notre Dame to finish this very long homestand of only playing within the state of Georgia or at McNeese. Jake, is there any? I know you watched some of this, so.
I just want to say that exactly what happened to the pitching is exactly what we've been saying this entire year. I have no regrets for saying that it was going to happen because it was going to happen. It was not pretty on Saturday or Friday. It was rather embarrassing. And anyone who was screaming about how Tech should have been ranked after playing a bunch of teams, well, Georgia Southern is good, and they hosted a regional. But, one good team and playing 8 games against, well, Kennesaw State's good too. But you know what I mean? 7 games where you could just blast the heck out of a ball. They got shown up, and it's the exact same thing that we've been watching since, I guess after the 2019 season when a great stable of pitchers all graduated and got drafted and all that. And it's frustrating, right? I think it's fair to call it frustrating because, this team can be better. And, some of that's due to injuries in would-be starters. I know that's kind of circulated a little bit.
There is some. Compton's out. Jaden Jackson's out. So our third, basically at the left side of the infield's been using backups so far, and it's been a rotating cast of backups back there. So that's been pretty rough. And then, who's the pitcher that's out? One of you two.
Cam Hill, and I think Logan is out
Logan
too.
McGuire. Yeah, McGuire's out too. So there are notable names that were not available to be used on this whole weekend, this past week, and won't be this week, I believe, as well. So that is a drawback. Those are 2 very vital positions between. It's like three most important positions from the pitcher to the left side of the infield. So that's not nothing. That has impacted the team. I don't think it was going to necessarily save those two losses we had against Georgia with how much they beat us by, but it's something that will definitely play its hand going forward. So yeah, 4 p.m. tomorrow on Tuesday. So I mean, also I'll note the Saturday game at Tech was it was sold out. It was a lovely environment, despite what happened. Being at Rush Chandler then was really cool to see, and just being at a good old baseball game in early spring with perfect weather. And Buzz being a gangster and all that kind of fun stuff that happens. And they released the New Realm beer, so that served as the launch event for Ale of an Engineer,
which they did not have when Akshay and I were on the Beltline on Sunday. But
interesting. New Realm actually released two baseball specific, like school specific beers. They released a beer for that, and then they had another beer they released for some baseball team in South Carolina that I only found out about because a beer writer friend I know was at a New Realm event, added a sports game for that. So they did a double sport themed beer release day on Saturday, which no free ads. This is a Wild Heaven podcast also, but it was still cool to see that New Realm has its fingers in other athletic communities beyond Georgia Tech.
In terms of this weekend, I'm going to go with a completely unsolicited plug for the Young Alumni Yellow Jacket Club event that's happening Friday at McNeese. That's for young alumni with season tickets for football. I know that's something that I appreciate that Tech is doing to engage people that are our segment of alumni. So if anyone's there and has comments on the podcast, maybe you'll see me if they're nice, but if they're not, then you won't see me. But
what you should do is just walk nearby Jake and just whisper to no one in particular. Have you heard about his podcast?
But definitely great to see Tech trying to engage that segment of the alumni. There are 4 home games this weekend, and it's an opportunity to get right against a team that was in the College World Series, but did lose their coach year over year. So should make for interesting baseball. I think pitching is exactly what we thought it would be, and we'll need to figure it out if this team's going to be great or if they're just going to be fine.
It's really the operant question of our time. Will baseball be good or just its usual self?
Will they be? It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just fine.
It's befuddling. It's befuddled all of the preeminent scholars of our time. Truly remarkable. Let's go over to the club sports as we round out the week. Men's lacrosse, which Jake is often noted as Tech's most consistent and best team.
I wrote that one today.
Well, both of you have noted that
Woo!
Pretty frequently. They beat Clemson, a pretty close win over Clemson. They came from behind to beat number 1 ranked Virginia Tech and also took home a win versus number 11 California.
Where are we ranked now? Do you know?
They're at least
should be number 1. I think it's
if not higher.
2 or 1. Okay, I figured.
I haven't seen another poll.
They were ranked number 2 in the second poll, but I think it's only a monthly or bi-weekly poll, and they just released one last week. So,
gotcha. So we preemptively should be number 1 whenever this next one does come out, assuming beating the number 1 team does that.
Yes.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You know,
enter the BCS.
We play number 4, Jerry Falwell University next up. So.
Fantastic. But men's lacrosse, they're still stacking and racking wins. So go out and support them at Stamps Field if you get the chance. It's a pretty good environment. The band usually comes out. It's pretty fun. Not much else around the club circuit. Mr. Grant, you're usually our club aficionado. Anything else?
It's been quiet, or maybe I've just been busy. Hockey is apparently going to AAU Nationals.
They are. Yes, they do they'll be traveling for that.
I don't know why, because they were 10-14, 1-1 this year, but it's good to see at least. And we wish them all the best there. I'm scrambling to pull up their schedule because I am slow to the punch, but let's see. CHF hockey. This is great content.
Great podcasting. We were prepared.
AAU college hockey starting for the 2023-2024. Where are they hosting this? They will play against Farmingdale on Rink 1 on Friday, and they will play against Delaware also on Rink 1 on Saturday, and then they will play against Kutztown on Rink 4 on Sunday with
This is in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Oh, again? Nice. That's where they were last year. Great bookstore there if they need to get some reading between games in.
Just a bizarre set of teams that shows up to the College Hockey Federation or the AAU National Championships for hockey.
Jake, you had your trivia question too you wanted to do?
Yes, I do have my trivia question. I've been trying to do this for 3 weeks, so let's get it out. Do you guys remember what the setup was? Because I know I've told you guys, but do you?
I think we did the setup on an episode that actually wasn't on, and I just do it women's basketball. Well, that seems fun, and then we went for too long. It's like, shit, we're not doing this today. So,
yep. So Georgia Tech has played 248 unique schools in women's basketball in its time as a program. There are 23 that we've played double-digit times. Can you guess among those 23 whom Tech has played the most and who Tech has the best win percentage against? Bonus points if you can guess the exact number of times we played the most common opponent.
23. So we're doing the 5 most frequently played opponents.
Sure, you can do top 5, but also if you can also guess which one Tech has the best win percentage against those 23.
So team started in the 70s. And at that point we were, what conference were we in?
It was still
independent.
Title IX wasn't
independent
until
till ACC.
Yeah, okay.
Title IX wasn't until 72.
They were never members of the Metro. How's that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Georgia's one of them. I'm gonna say. You already shake your head. Wow, no. When did their team not exist then? I guess.
No, they did. We've just only played them 44 times.
Didn't play them.
We also have a horrible win percentage against them, but anyways, continue.
We only played Georgia 4 times?
44 times.
That's still the oh wow, okay, that's not enough. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Auburn, yeah, you said Auburn, that's a good one. I like that pick. I will also say not Georgia State. I figured any of Duke, North Carolina, NC State should also be up there.
North Carolina, and NC State are in the top 5.
Okay.
The other 3 are also ACC teams.
Oh, okay.
Cuse?
Nope. They have only been in the ACC for 1 second.
Right.
Clemson is our most played team with 91.
Okay.
Matchups prior to this season. So 93 currently, but 91 prior to this year.
The Virginia schools?
Virginia is number 3. Keep in mind, Virginia Tech has only been in the ACC for about 15 years, so we've only played them 20 times. The last one is Wake Forest. I think you may have said that, and I may have just missed it.
I forgot them in the North Carolina segment of schools that I said.
All good. Prior to this year, we had played Clemson 91 times. I believe that's 93 now. North Carolina 81. That should be 82. Now Virginia 76 and Wake Forest 76. NC State, weirdly, only 75. Tech is 645 against Wake Forest. Only 320 against NC State, 237 against Virginia, which is weirdly more than both North Carolina and, well, not so weirdly, Clemson. So Clemson is a 505 win percentage. To circle back on Auburn, Akshay, just because I think this is relevant, we've actually only played Auburn 4 times. So that's your football, men's basketball, SEC.
So this is a Fortner thing. This is a Fortner thing then.
Mm-hmm.
This is totally a Fortner thing.
I want to put this out there. Which has Tech played more often, Auburn or Auburn Montgomery?
Well,
Jack, you got my trick question.
Yes.
Dang. 4 times apiece.
Yikes.
Among teams that Tech has played double-digit times, they have a 1,000. They are batting 1,000 against Kennesaw State. They are 14-0-0 prior to this year. but against Notre Dame, they played 17 times and won just once. Those are your two outlier points. Also of note, the 25th most common opponent at 9 times in all of history is Louisville. Georgia Tech is 0 for 9 against Louisville, and also weirdly 1 for 9 against Augusta College or Augusta University out in Augusta. So definitely some weird ones on here, but Notre Dame. There's one very lonely win on that list.
Could have been 2 after last year, or I guess 2 seasons ago at this point.
Yep.
But when you run into Olivia Miles, things tend to not go your way.
Noted Alpharetta Georgian Olivia Miles, by the way, but I'm not upset by that.
Grad transfer.
Gentlemen, I think that is about it for us this week. Thank you, Mr. Grant, for setting up some trivia. Let's roll out. Take us out.
Yep. As always, you can find us at FromTheRumbleSeat.com. We publish articles with this fine podcast, as well as, the ASA article we mentioned earlier when he was joining us for the evening, and also everything from football to men's basketball to whatever I'm covering on a given day, or whatever Jack is writing about, including Survivor. So go check that out too. You can email us at FromTheRumbleSeat@gmail.com. You can find us at Twitter at FTRS blog, at Jake Grant 98 for myself, and at Jack Nicholas for Jack. You can find Section 103, our illustrious partner, at Section 103 on Twitter and section103.com on the interwebs. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at From the Rumble Seat, and you can find our podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold, distributed, and otherwise, handed out. In the meantime, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.